Haley Show, and I'm with soon to be author tomorrow, Grace Lynx Jenkins. You got to be so excited. It's coming so soon, and you got to feel really psyched. Comes out tomorrow everywhere, and we're here to talk about it. How are you, Grace?
Oh, yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing great. I'm so excited. I'm ready for it to be out.
I'm sure you are. So let's talk about specifically the process of how you started, the first ideas that came to your head about this book, and the process and how long it took to get that first book out.
Okay, so it all started back when I was in college. I just had this scene floating around in my head. It's like I saw it, and at first it was actually going to be a webtoon, but then I decided to just make the novel, and I started writing down that one scene. It gave me an idea of, okay, what is this guy up against? What's he like? What's this world like that he lives in? And I just expanded on it from there. And it took me, I think, about a few months. And then I had the outline after I talked to my editor. And then it took me 3 years to write the whole entire book.
Wow, 3 years. Okay. And so from that first idea, you just start jotting things down, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was like, I'm very much what I would call a spurt writer. I write in spurts. So there will be weeks where I'll write multiple chapters and I'll feel really good about it. And then there will be weeks where I could not get a sentence together. And I just had to keep going with it, had to keep sticking with it until the very end.
And so, and interesting. So, once you came up with the idea, Noah wasn't developed yet, right? When you first came up with the idea.
No, I knew that there was a character and that he could see through other people's eyes. And I knew that there was a monster that he was seeing. And originally, the ending was going to be wildly different from what it is now. Um, and I think it's from that first concept of a scene and then that first concept of a ending that I kind of grew it out from there. And I started to think about Noah as a character and about all of the other characters around him and how they would interact with each other and what the biggest conflict would be in this book.
Exactly. And I think the cool thing about let's talk about Noah for a second. Once you developed Noah, who did he remind you of? Is there a specific person or uh, that you've patterned this after, or is it just for your studies, or what do you think? I mean, just the personality versus the character and his powers.
Well, whenever people that I know, my friends, have read snippets of this, they have always said that Noah's personality is a lot like mine. In many cases, it is a lot like mine. He tends to be a little bit more introverted, more reserved. He tends to be more introspective as well. So you have a lot that you can do with that. And for me, I think a lot of this book was just write what you know. It's kind of well, I'm not really in the police force and I never have been, but at the same time, a lot of the book's themes do focus on that write what you know. At the time
Right.
I was in college, my book heavily focuses on mental health. I am a psychology major. Um, I focused a lot, especially on abnormal psychology, mood disorders, personality disorders. So, using that knowledge, I went ahead and applied it to the book. And then for other characters, a lot of them were inspired by other people, I believe, their personalities at the very least, from the general traits that I would see in other people, I would put them in these other characters. And when you do that, you get an organic community within your book where you can have all of these different characters interact, and they don't all think the same, they don't all act the same. They have various emotions that they express in many different ways. So there's the opportunity to have conflict in between all of these different personalities, which I think is what mainly drives the plot itself forward, is the conflicts between how characters think and how they act toward each other.
Now, you said it reminds you of Noah. Why is it not a male character instead of female character? If your friends say that it reminds them of you so much.
So, interestingly, I actually tend to prefer to write male characters, especially during that time period. That's just something that I felt comfortable doing at the time. Um, there are also some struggles that I think just couldn't have been addressed if Noah were a woman, or there would have been this expectation to have all of these added on features that female characters tend to have, especially in the modern day. When you look at modern books, there's an ongoing joke that authors cannot write female characters, which I don't think is completely true, but female characters tend to not be written very well across the spectrum within modern writing, from what I have seen, especially if you look at things like Hollywood, for example. They will simplify a female character down to these particular traits because they're trying to make this character look like a strong, independent woman or a super, super feminine woman. And it ends up where they don't give their characters flaws. And as a result, because you didn't give the character flaws, the character doesn't feel real. So I think that Noah is male because A, I've already written from the perspective of male characters before, and B, I was very scared of falling into the trap of making a female character and just not giving her any meaningful flaws, especially a protagonist. I wanted everybody to be real.
So why do you like writing male characters first? And I'd love to go back to the whole female character thing. But go ahead. Why do you like to write male characters better than female?
For me, I really do think it's because of the typical approach used in the quote unquote masculine style of thinking. So for me, I am a woman, but I am also very direct. I work in a STEM related field. I don't necessarily do a lot of things that many women around me do. I just enjoy things a little bit differently. And some of my interests tend to line up with those of men, which that's not a bad thing by any means. A woman can enjoy those things if she wants to. Um, but I felt that it would be easier and make Noah feel even more real if I made him a male. On top of that, the original scene that I had, I knew the character was a male. For me, the characters tend to show up in my mind, and it's not like I'm actively, you are actively creating them, but it doesn't feel that way. I just see the character pop up and they're like, hey, here I am, write about me please, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So why are female characters so difficult to write? And like people do write about female characters. What do you think it is?
Well, personally, it really does come down to people putting agenda first over wanting to make their characters real. The pitfall with female characters, especially with modern writers, because there are people who write wonderful female characters, but the problem is that They don't want to offend anyone, so they'll try to make the female character be a certain way. And what ends up happening is that she doesn't act real at all. She doesn't have any real flaws. You'll see this all the time. You'll have the, oh, I don't need no man. I'm an independent girl boss character. And no woman, almost no woman is going to act like that. Every human being has flaws. What would work is if you gave the character flaws and then they learn from those flaws. But I do think that people don't seem to want to do that with female characters because they're afraid of offending other people, particularly offending certain women, maybe even certain men as well. And that's really something that is detrimental to art as a whole, whether you're talking books or movies, plays, anything like that. It all comes down to your characters. If you want to have a good character, whether male or female, you have to make it where they have flaws and where they seem real and as if they fit into this world where they actually learn something from other characters. Those are the kinds of pitfalls that I have tended to see, especially in modern day movies, particularly, or at least in the reviews that I have seen of a lot of modern day movies.
Interesting. Okay, so it's difficult to have a female character. Okay. So talking about Noah's development, once you had the ideas together and all this, how did you come up with his gift? His that's the thing that people have to get excited about is what his powers, his superpowers.
It's actually a result of something that I was going through in college at the time. So I noticed that certain people have super big feelings and they project those big feelings out. And then you have people that sit and they kind of absorb those feelings and they're a little bit more introspective. I tend to be more on the absorbing end. And you can see this with Noah whenever he's having to deal with somebody that has a stronger personality and he's getting pulled into their side. He's not going to be happy about it. It's kind of the same philosophy. You have two different working modes. You have an internally focused mode, and then you have the externally focused mode. And I think that that's where the idea personally came from because I have a more internally centered focus, but I also know some people who are externally focused on their surroundings. So, based on that, I decided to explore those feelings through this power.
Wild. Okay, so you have that power then too.
To an extent, I suppose you could say. Um, yeah, it's like, it's not a weird superpower or anything like that. It's just that I tend to be a little more driven toward thinking introspectively about things, and maybe I might be a little bit more quiet and detail oriented than other people. And
Hmm.
the thing is that if you have somebody who's quieter and more detail oriented, typically you're going to see that they pick up on emotional cues through body language that other people may not notice. You could even argue the same thing with some externally driven people. That's what makes certain extroverts so charismatic and so good at talking to other people because they are very proficient in reading body language. So
Mm.
it all comes down to your level of self awareness versus your awareness of other people's emotions based on how they're acting.
How self-aware are you?
That's a very good question. It really does depend on the day. Sometimes I want to say, yeah, I'm pretty self aware, but then there are those days where you just kind of go, yeah, I'm a little impulsive. That's okay.
So this self-awareness is such an important thing. It almost leads to why you want a character like Noah to have empathetic qualities. Because if you're self-aware, you're going to be empathetic most of the time. Or you're taking advantage of people because you're so self-aware if you're not empathetic. Do you want Noah to be that empathetic type of a character?
Yes, actually, I do. I really do want him to be this empathetic character. I think that we could all, including myself, learn a lesson about self awareness and about how we manage dealing with other people on a regular basis. That's part of what this whole entire book is about. The main theme is about okay, how do we deal with other people in a way that's healthy? There
Yeah.
are healthy ways to deal with other people, and there are very unhealthy ways to deal with other people. And a lot of what I've seen, especially during when I was in college toward the end, it was COVID. So we had people all over the internet. They were getting mad at each other. You have these huge political polarizations on both ends that are just insane, and everybody hates each other. And at a certain point, you have to stop and think, I can't really control what other people think, but I can control myself and I can control how I treat these other people and how I conduct myself.
Hmm. So talking about self-awareness, one quality Noah has, or it's not a great quality, it's his crutch, is after he goes and reads through people's mind and understand who they are, he takes on some of their qualities. That's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it is for sure. Because if you are having a hard time self regulating, that's what they call it, self regulating, where you're trying to keep your emotions under check. If you have a hard time doing that and you've just been in this other person's mind, you come back, you've absorbed their emotions. Well, now you also have to deal with their baggage on top of yours. And if you don't have a very good way of regulating your own emotions, then it's going to be extremely hard to regulate the emotions that you just absorbed. And this is something where Noah is born with these powers. So ever since he was a child, he's been having to constantly deal with this. And if you think about it, especially as a child and even as a young adult, it is very hard to self regulate.
You know what's interesting, and this is one thing I wanted to touch on. um, that you talk about. We talked about the characters a lot, but one thing we did not talk about is some of the difficult topics that are in this book,
Yeah.
especially cutting. Um, this is where a lot of people don't want to have these conversations. They don't want to have that mental health conversation of the challenges and things in that nature. You really touch upon these in this book.
Yeah, I do. I certainly do put in a lot of these topics in there. According to mental health, there are themes of self harm, there are all these different things. And the reason why is because this is a very, very important topic. It is an ugly topic, but it is incredibly common, especially for people who are younger adults around now. Suicide is one of the highest causes of death for people in my generation. And to me, as a psychology major, it's incredibly important that we actually do look at depression and other mental health disorders with compassion, understanding, without romanticizing them or demonizing them. Because the thing is, especially on social media nowadays, you'll have people that will say, well, because I have this mental disorder, I can behave very badly and excuse my actions. No, that's not how it works. You're supposed to take accountability for your actions. The point of being diagnosed with a mental health disorder is so that you have the understanding. And then once you know what you have, you go through all of the different steps. You go through the therapy, you take your medications if you need to. It's all about a road to healing and learning how to cope.
Yes.
So a lot of that is super, super important, especially for younger adults. I would even say older adults as well. I do think that we are in the middle of a mental health crisis in our society. And one of the ways that I feel like I can help is by pointing out that this is a realistic depiction of depression. This is what mental illness is. It is not fun, it's not nice. You're going to be uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's very important that you understand what's going on, because then not only can you help yourself if you have these problems, but you can also help other people. Other people can read this book and then maybe be able to be there for people that they know who do have these struggles. People who have these struggles can read the book and relate to that, and maybe even find a few pointers on how to go about getting up the courage to actually go get help.
Yes. That's not easy.
No, it's not.
And so you talked about cutting. What other mental health topics did you discuss in the book?
Mainly depression, which depression is not just about the self-harm, it's not just about the suicide attempts. I say just about, but it's not those things. There's also the not eating, having an extreme appetite,
Oh, yeah.
wanting to sleep all the time, being irritable. There are all of these different internal things that are going on, especially within people with depression. A lot of times they ruminate, which means they'll think about this negative thing, or it'll pop up into their mind automatically, and then they just get stuck in a loop. And it's
Right.
like you cannot escape the loop. And
Never. Yeah.
this book shows Noah going through all of these symptoms, and it allows people to understand that depression is really rough, and these are the actual symptoms. It's not just somebody saying, "Oh, I'm sad." No, you are miserable all the time, and you have all these other symptoms too
Mhm.
on top of it.
So the way you're able to touch upon all these things and make it an entertaining book is just so that's part of the character's flaws, right? In this book are these things. And then at least that'll lead to a new conversation when people read the book and are entertained by sight in so many ways.
Yeah,
And you see a lot of writers do this. Remember, I asked you, who do you remind yourself as a writer? But by adding this theme, at least to this book, you're really putting a new spin on things with really bringing the current structure of what's happening in mental health to the table in this book.
yeah. I haven't really seen a whole lot of modern authors per se do this. I'm certain that there are plenty. I know that there are some, especially in the gaming industry, that do deal with a lot of heavy topics,
Hmm.
such as depression. But as far as modern day writings, most of what I have seen has not leaned that way. Obviously, there are probably quite a few books that lean this way, but most of the time, whenever I've heard about the topic being discussed in any form of literature in the modern day, it's always been either a romanticization or a demonization of mental health disorders. There are a lot of people that will not do research on the topics that they are presenting. And because they don't do the research, it may end up falling flat. The thing is, if you're going to write about a topic like this, you have to do it in a way that is realistic so that you're able to accurately portray it and allow your reader to have empathy with this situation, but at the same time you don't want to excuse it.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the hardest things to do as an author personally.
Yeah. Well, so again, site will be out tomorrow. Pick it up on Amazon, and then on June 3rd, you can go to gracelynxjenkins.com and you can purchase her book right online. She'll send you an autographed copy of the book. So that'll be really exciting. But right now, tomorrow, everyone go to Amazon for one day only. It's going to be available at a special price. So tune in June 2nd to pick up Sight on Amazon. Take care. Thanks again, Grace.
Thank you.
That was the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show, guys, and take care. Wow.